This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Down the Stretch. I'm Mark Asano. On this morning's show, during our topical discussion, Chrome goes green. Then we will welcome in three very special guests, all of whom are first-timers to the program, beginning with Mr. Niall Saville, who will send out Legendary in this afternoon's Red Smith at Aqueduct. Then we'll go to Churchill and welcome in Mr. Ben Colebrook, who has a live long shot in Sparkling Review for this afternoon's Mrs. Revere. And finally, out to Southern California, we will welcome in Mr. Scott Chaney, one of the three stewards involved in the Breeders' Cup Classic controversy. So all of that and much, much more if you stay with us for this, our November 15th edition of the program, which is being sponsored by Bloodlines Racing. Racing quality horses like Distorted Beauty, who goes in today's Mrs. Revere, and Invading Humor. And for information on their half-sister, visit them on the web at bloodlinesracing.com. Good morning. Once again, welcome to our mid-November show on a rather chilly Saturday morning, where the high temperatures are expected to reach right around 38, which is a pretty good golf score for 9 holes, but as a temperature is not too pleasing. Settle in, relax. I think we've got a good show for you this morning with 3 first-timers, including Scott Chaney, the steward, one of the 3 stewards involved in the Breeders' Cup Classic controversial decision. But we get started this morning talking about California Chrome. Coming off a close third in the Breeders' Cup Classic, he will make his next start in the November 29th Hollywood Derby on turf. Now, trainer Art Sherman has told us several times on this show that he would like to try his Derby and Preakness winner on grass, and he now has his wish. And with the Eclipse races for Champion 3-year-old and Horse of the Year, I think still pretty wide open, a victory on a foreign surface would be a boost to California Chrome's chances for an Eclipse. And a couple of retirements. FedBiz, who ran Shared Belief to a head in the Awesome Again Stakes, has been retired. A multiple Grade 2 winner, FedBiz ended his career with a poor 7th in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. And Center Court, who, when healthy and in top form, was a force in the filly and mare turf division, has also been retired. A winner of about $960,000 lifetime, Center Court was being pointed to next Saturday's Cardinal at Churchill. But trainer Rusty Arnold didn't like the way she was training, so the decision to retire her was made. In Europe, Kingman, who was retired a few months ago, won the Cartier Award as Horse of the Year. The 3-year-old, trained by John Gosden, captured the Irish 2000 Guineas, the St. James's Palace Stakes, the Sussex Stakes, and the Prix Jacques Lemoyne. He was also named Champion 3-year-old male. And Johar, who dead heated for the win in the 2003 Breeders' Cup Turf, died recently in a paddock accident. Johar, who was trained by Dick Mandela, was 15 years old. Jockey Junior Alvarado will be sidelined from 2 to 4 weeks after suffering a hairline fracture of a vertebra just below his shoulder blade. The incident occurred while Alvarado's mount was galloping out past the wire in Wednesday's fifth race at Aqueduct. Alvarado, who was cited for reckless riding in an incident in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, had continued to ride while appealing that pretty cut-and-dried ruling. And congratulations to Finger Lakes trainer Michael Ferraro, who recently scored career victory number 3,000. Ferraro, who has won 18 training titles at Finger Lakes, was the conditioner of the outstanding New York-bred Fiorito, who came to Saratoga back in 1981 and upset the Whitney. These are very important times for the reorganization board at the New York Racing Association, because they must have a plan in place for the reprivatization of NYRA by April of next year. Well, this past Wednesday, they had a rather brief board meeting, but some important things came to the fore. First, the current board will not make a recommendation on what to do with Aqueduct Racetrack. It was believed by many that the reorganization board would recommend the closing of Aqueduct as a cost-cutting measure, but that did not happen. Now, NYRA President Chris Kay hinted at the idea of reducing the number of racing dates at Aqueduct. Now, that will take a law change, since NYRA is currently committed by state law to run a minimum number of cards throughout the year. Kay and CFO Suzanne Stover talked about NYRA expecting to show a profit for 2014 of about $1.5 million. Now, that's aside from their VLT revenues. The increased prices at Saratoga and on Belmont Stakes Day played a large part in that profit. Now, we will have to see if NYRA continues to raise prices in 2015, since they showed a profit this year, and let's not forget, they are a not-for-profit. And finally, as expected, Saratoga 2015 will have the same 6.5-week, 40-day, 6-day-a-week schedule. Next year's meet will begin as late as possible on the calendar, July 24th, because Labor Day is as late as possible on September 7th. Normally, what that type of date structure means, the beginning of the meet will be quite strong because it's as close to August as you could possibly get. But finishing up so late in September, the end of the meet might be a bit weak. Another honor for former NYRA track announcer Tom Durkin. The Turf Publicists of America have selected Durkin as the recipient of the Big Sport of Turfdom Award. The annual award is given to someone who enhances coverage of thoroughbred racing through cooperation with the media and racing publicists. Durkin is the first track announcer to win the award. And finally, Palace Malice, who was retired a few months back, will be returning to the races in 2015. The Met Mile and Belmont Stakes hero underwent a veterinary exam, which included x-rays and ultrasounds, and was declared sound and healthy. He had originally been diagnosed with a bruising of a hind cannon bone, which led to his premature retirement. Considering just how weak the older horse division was this year, it will be great to have Palace Malice back in 2015. Let's hope that he can get back to the form which carried him to a number of victories early in the year, his final race, that disappointing effort in the Whitney. And we are up to our first break. When we return, Mr. Niall Saville will join us. As we go to the break, the Long Island last Saturday at Aqueduct. The 8-5 favorite, number 5, Danza Cavallo. The 3.5-1 second choice, number 2, Viva Raffaella. So we will take a look at the Long Island to the break, and we will be back with Niall Saville right after these messages.
And they're off. And the 12 fillies and mares head out for this 12-furlong Long Island handicap. And Invading Humor is going for the early lead. Danza Cavallo, a little headstrong there in between horses. Ague Marine is on the inside with Viva Raffaella. Then comes Giant Shadows racing in fourth. Danza Cavallo still a bit to handle there in fifth. On the inside is Tabreed in sixth. Embar now moves up a spot. Then comes Maximova, followed by Hellenistic. Old Alliance has made her way down to the rail. Then comes Song of Ice and Fire. And the trailer is Mary Chica in 12th. The quarter went in 24 and 4/5 seconds. They come through the stretch here for the first time, and it's Invading Humor. And she's built a 3-length lead over Viva Raffaella. Down on the inside is Ague Marine in third, followed by Giant Shadow running in fourth. Danza Cavallo seems to have settled down now and is in fifth. Embar's on the outside in sixth. And then it's Tabreed down at the rail and racing in seventh. Maximova's in between horses in eighth. Old Alliance, Hellenistic on the outside. Then Song of Ice and Fire, and Mary Chica continues to trail. They move around the clubhouse turn, and it is Invading Humor with the lead here by 2.5 lengths. Viva Raffaella in second. Ague Marine down on the inside in third. And Danza Cavallo is fourth. The half in 51 seconds, 3/4 in 1:18 over this yielding turf. And now they're midway up the backstretch for the final time. And it's Invading Humor still there by almost 2. Viva Raffaella in second. Ague Marine is third. Danza Cavallo is fourth, 4 lengths from the front. Then it's Giant Shadow, Maximova, Tabreed, and Embar on the outside, followed by Old Alliance, Hellenistic, Song of Ice and Fire, and Mary Chica. Into the far turn, Invading Humor. Viva Raffaella now begins to pick it up on the outside. Invading Humor, 3/4 of a length. Viva Raffaella in second. Danza Cavallo is now gaining ground from third. Then it's Embar, Ague Marine down at the rail. Maximova is now coming on. And Tabreed as the field comes down for the 8th pole. Danza Cavallo is the leader and Maximova. And on the inside, it's Ague Marine. It is Danza Cavallo with the lead on the inside. Here comes Ague Marine. Ague Marine, Danza Cavallo. Ague Marine got it right at the end. Ahead separating the two after 1.5 miles in the Long Island Handicap.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Looking for a racing partnership with proven success? Bloodlines Racing is for you. Using genetic profiling, Bloodlines horses are bred from some of the most successful thoroughbreds in the world. Horses like Distorted Beauty and Invading Humor have won 6 of their last 7 races over the summer, and together have delivered to our partners more than $366,000 in earnings. For our latest offerings and opportunities, visit us at bloodlinesracing.com. Bloodlines Racing. Racing quality.
Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to capitalotv.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. capitalotv.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. I'm Mark Asano, and Ague Marine, freshened since a dull effort late in the Saratoga meet, sets a gorgeous inside trip and runs down Danza Cavallo to capture the Long Island for Christophe Clement and John Velasquez. Our first guest this morning will be saddling the very sharp and consistent legendary for this afternoon's Red Smith at Aqueduct. We welcome in live via telephone Mr. Niall Saville. Niall, Mark Cassano welcoming you to Down the Stretch.
Hello, good morning.
Niall, it's very nice to have you. As a first-timer to the program, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. You sure have the right pedigree to be successful in this game.
Yeah, I've been over here now 9 years. I'm originally from England. My mother and father are both in the business, in racehorse side and show jumping side. So I've been brought up since I can remember with horses around me, and I've worked with some good people, and I've ended up over here now for the last 9 years, like I said.
And since you have come to the States, you work for some very successful people here in America.
Yeah, I think the first person I worked for over here was Janet Elliott, which is more the steeplechase world, but very successful. And I went to Michael Dickinson for a short stint there, and then I used to gallop for Graham Motion, who, you know, doing exceptionally well at the moment.
Well, Niall, let's talk Legendary. And as our audience watches a piece of his 4th of July victory at Belmont Park, and for our audience, as we pick it up, Legendary is number 5, stalking in second. Niall, tell us when you got Legendary, and what were your first impressions of him?
Got him early March. He arrived to me at Barbados. We were just sort of wrapping up things there. We had him there 2 or 3 weeks, and then we moved to Keeneland with the idea that his first run was going to be at Keeneland. They thought he was more of he had a favouring for the poly track in England, so we thought we may run him on the poly track in Keeneland, and that was the thinking behind it. He was, he's a good horse over there, but he wasn't sparkling. He was just running in handicaps, and we liked him on paper, and we thought he may excel over here. And he definitely excelled a lot more than I originally would have expected. He's been he's just been surprising us all the time. He just got better and better.
He obviously seems to have adapted to American grass racing very, very well.
Yeah, and that was definitely in the thinking of bringing him over. We knew we wanted a consistent sort of gallop and more, sort of the flatter tracks we have here, and just more of a rhythm to the racing. He was pulling his way to the front a little bit in England, and he was a horse that didn't really need to be in the front. So few little things like that. The racing just definitely helped him over here, the style of it.
He is now a 5-year-old gelding. Niall, take a moment to describe him for us from a physical standpoint, and what's he like mentally to be around?
Well, physically, he's a nice big type of horse, very athletic, and he is, sorry, I just got a little distracted there. He's a good-looking horse, very athletic, and mentally he has grown up a lot since we got him. As a 5-year-old, I'd say he's probably the greenest 5-year-old we've ever been around. Part of that, he was very nervous coming out here, and he's developed as the years gone on, and as he's won more races, he's come out of each one and got very confident from it and improved from it. So he's definitely going the right direction.
Well, that's wonderful. Now, he gave you, I believe, your first stakes win when he won the Japan Racing Stakes. Following that, he ran in the Knickerbocker at Belmont. As we pick it up for our audience, Legendary is number 6, sitting in 3rd. Niall, talk about this very nice victory.
The Knickerbocker was sort of the plan for him for quite a while. Once he won his allowance at Belmont, the second allowance he won, I was sort of starting to look at that's where we'd have a look at a graded stake, and he did it just really nicely. We kept him sharp, running him a mile and 16th at Laurel, and that he was always in a good position, and he was just ready whenever Sheldon pressed the button on him to go. And he gave me a few nervous moments when I saw how early he did go and hit the front soon, but kept going and made it look very easy. I was very impressed with him.
You know, and that's a pretty good horse running second to him up with the Birds. Niall, was this his best effort to date?
Yeah, most definitely. You know, I think everything fell together for him because he was a green horse coming out here, and he's improved for each race. And you see in a few of his earlier races, he got to the front and looked around a little bit, and in the Knickerbocker, he just was very professional. Did it as he liked, and I don't think Sheldon didn't hit him once. You know, it was all hands and heels, and the horse came out of it bouncing, and you wouldn't know if he had a race the day after. So I was just delighted with him.
That's wonderful. You mentioned Sheldon Russell. He's ridden him in his last 2 starts. What's he said to you?
Oh, he just, you know, he likes the horse a lot, and he was as impressed as we all were with the Knickerbocker. He said he just did it as he liked. And I'm delighted as a personal note for Sheldon to ride my first stake winner for me there at Laurel. Me and Sheldon started together at Michael Dickinson's. We both came over from England at the same time, and he went his direction, I went mine, and we met up when I actually had my first runner. I couldn't get anybody to ride her because she was quite a long shot. Sheldon rode her for me, and she won at Pimlico for a maiden claim in $8,000. So we've come a long way together. So it's very nice for him to ride for me.
That's wonderful. How has Legendary trained since the Knickerbocker? How's he coming up to this afternoon's Red Smith?
No, pretty good. He's put in. We haven't been over hard on him. He had a few easy days after that, and he just went right back into his program. We weren't 100% sure we were going to go again because the Knickerbocker was the goal, and I think it's because he's trained so good. We've decided to go today, and he's put into his works. I'm very happy with him. So I've been across with him.
The Red Smith this afternoon come up pretty tough with Big Blue Kitten in there. Legendary has shown adaptability from 8.5 furlongs to 1.5 miles. So any concerns for you with the 11 furlongs this afternoon?
I think so. Because I don't think, although he can stay, and I think he'll be just fine today, it isn't. I don't think he's 1 mile and 3/8 or 1.5 miles horse in the future. I think we'll be shortening him up next year. But he seems to relax in his races, and he stays. He's got pedigree there to stay from his mother, and I'm always concerned, but I prefer it was 1 mile and 1/8. But this was a nice spot for him without having to ship him all over the country to have one more run this year, and I think he'll be okay.
Well, Niall, first of all congratulations with the successes with Legendary. I mean, he's really come a long way since that allowance race at Keeneland when he made his American debut. So congratulations to you and your staff. All the best later on in the Red Smith, and we thank you so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch.
Thank you very much, and yeah, you've made a point there. I'd like to congratulate my own staff. I have a great team at home, and we can't do this without the whole team doing it, and it's definitely been a team job with Legendary.
Well, that's wonderful. Keep it going. Thanks again, Niall. Niall Saville, ladies and gentlemen, the trainer of Legendary, and we are up to our next break. When we return, it's off to Kentucky, where we will welcome in Mr. Ben Colebrook as we go to this break, the River City at Churchill. And the 90 cent to the dollar favorite, number 6, Silver Max. Very, very classy horse. But the big question in here was, do you take a short price on a horse who's got a lot of class but was off form? And to take 90 cents to the dollar on somebody off form is a little bit shaky. So we'll take a look at the River City to the break. Back with Ben Colebrook right after these messages.
They're all in line. They're racing in the River City. And it is Our Great Adventure. Set the sail, and to the outside there goes Silver Max. And Silver Max up to take the lead now. As expected, he will make the pace. Silver Max now scampers away to a 2-length lead over Set the Sail. Our Great Adventure, and then to the outside, Green Grass of Wyoming. Under control is on the far outside. Villendree's in behind them, and then comes Guy's Reward. Gentleman's Kitten is next after a 24 1/4. He's 7 lengths off the lead. After that comes Hamp, followed by Aldous Snow to the outside. And well back early is Dramedy. Now they race on the first turn where the leader is Silver Max. Robbie Alvarado and Silver Max onto the backstretch in front, and the lead a length and a half to Set the Sail. And then it's a 2.5 length gap back to Green Grass of Wyoming, Villendree, and Our Great Adventure on the inside. In behind them, under control, Guy's Reward is next, and they're followed by Gentleman's Kitten, who's got 6 lengths to make up after a 47 3/2 mile. Hamp has 10 lengths to gain at this stage, and then Aldous Snow and Dramedy. And now the field races for the far turn, and Silver Max continues to lead the way. Silver Max, 3/4 of a length, Set the Sail. Second to the outside, Villendree is in third. And then it's Green Grass of Wyoming in fourth. Guy's Reward behind them. Gentleman's Kitten is going up 4 wide. And they're coming to the top of the stretch, and Silver Max trying to take him the distance. Turns for home in front by a length and a half. Set the Sail on the outside comes after him. And here comes Villendree down the center. Guy's Reward up the rail. And now it is Villendree. Villendree has taken the lead and is pulling away as they come inside the final 16th. Hamp has moved up into second, but it's going to be Villendree in the River City. Hamp was second and then came under control, followed by Guy's Reward and Dramedy.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Hey race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, and amazing Vegas-style atmosphere. The Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. I'm Mark Asano. My thanks to Niall Saville once again for having joined us. And Villendree for Charlie Lepresti and Julien Leperoux captures his first stakes as he rallies to defeat Longshots Hamp and Under Control to win the River City. Our next guest will be saddling what I think is a fascinating long shot for today's highly contentious Mrs. Revere at Churchill Downs. The filly is Sparkling Review, her trainer, Mr. Ben Colebrook. Ben, Mark Casano welcoming you to Down the Stretch.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
It was very nice to have you on, Ben. Now, as we do with all of our first-time guests, I'll ask you to tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm from Central Kentucky. I grew up around the horses. I've been around it my whole life, and I spent 4.5 years working for Christophe Clement as his assistant. Traveling kind of the New York, Kentucky, Florida circuit, and at the end of the time with Christophe, I primarily handled most of his 2-year-olds, and would be based at Keeneland and got his 2-year-olds ready, and when they were ready to go up to New York, then they would go to him up there, and then I'd spend my winters at Payson Park. And last year, 2 years ago in August of 2012, I decided to go out on my own, and I've been on my own since.
Ben, how many horses do you currently have?
Right now I have 36.
Well, that's wonderful. We're about to talk about one really nice turf filly, that's Sparkling Review, as our audience watches a piece of her allowance victory at Kentucky Downs. And as we pick it up, she is in the red silks with the gold dots in behind the leaders. Ben, she is unbeaten on grass, but she began her career on dirt. Why was that?
Well, just she was ready to run, and we were trying to get a race into her, and there wasn't anything in the immediate future on the grass. And she had trained very well in the dirt, and I just figured, why not just start her going one turn on the dirt just to get a race under our belt. We kind of always thought she might, down the road was going to be a turf filly, but she trained very, very well in the dirt. And, the race was probably a little bit better. She kind of made than it looked, on paper. She kind of made a big middle move and just kind of flattened at the end. But she probably was, probably needed the race, and it definitely got us to where we needed to be as far as from a fitness standpoint.
Ben, talk about the progress she's made. I mean, in a relatively short period of time, couple of months, 3 races, she's gone from a maiden victory to being a graded stakes winner.
Yeah, it's kind of been a meteoric rise, but she's always shown that she had that kind of, potential. But, each race has kind of been a little bit better than the previous one. But, she's been able to overcome some trouble. I mean, like you saw in Kentucky Downs, she didn't have the best of trips. She got kind of banged around a little bit, and when she got clear, I mean, she kind of, ended the race, with the kind of a decisive move, and she was able to do the same thing at Keeneland. She had a wide draw that day, and Julian kind of was trying to get a position early, and he kept shuffling back, and she was probably a little further than we expected. But she was still able to kind of overcome it all, and kind of won fairly easy that day against what was a pretty tough field. So we keep raising the bar, and she keeps clearing it. So.
Well, we're going to take a look at her stakes review in just a moment, or her stakes victory, but right now, in a moment, we're going to put a shot of her on the screen. I'd like you to take a moment to describe her physically for our audience and tell us what she's like mentally.
She's a kind of a typical lemon drop kid filly. She kind of have a long back. She's not big, not overly big. She's probably medium sized. Very nice shoulder, lovely hind end, and she's a beautiful mover. That's kind of what makes her. I think that's what makes her a good filly. Is she's such an efficient move. There's no wasted action. I mean, she just gets into her stride very quickly, and she's got a beautiful turn of foot. She's a filly that usually when a horse tries to go faster, they either got to lengthen their stride or they quicken their stride, and she's actually able to do both. When you ask her to run, she lengthens her stride, and the cadence of her stride picks up as well. Not many horses. When I was around Giaponte, he kind of could do that, but you don't see many horses that are able to do that.
All right, we're about to take a look at her last start. This is the October 17th Valley View from Keeneland. For our audience, she is number 13, again in the red and gold. Much tougher field than she's ever faced, but absolutely no problem. A big win. Ben, talk about this.
Well, she gets kind of, Michael Matz's filly a little bit sassy around the turn, kind of makes the move. And, Julian she's moved, kind of moves along with her. And, he, kind of just asked her a little bit around the turn. She picks it up for him nicely. And then, she just kind of coast to the front. And, she won fairly, the speed was kind of holding that day. She had a little bit trouble wrangling in the speed filly, but, down the stretch, from the 16th pole on, she was in the clear. And, Julian she almost, really kind of won gearing down.
This was your first graded stakes win. This must have been exciting.
Yeah, it was my first win of the stakes of any kind, and it was only, came less than a year from my first win, which was at Keeneland. So, I mean, it's special to win any race at Keeneland, but, ultra special when you can win a graded stakes and you get to go out on the turf course and, do that whole process. It was kind of surreal. I was pitching myself for a couple of days afterwards.
Now, I know there were a couple of scratches out of the body of the race, but Ben, I think she was 30-1 in the program and went off at 7. What was that all about?
The day she worked on the turf at Keeneland, I mean, she was very impressive that day. Julian rode her, and that's kind of what convinced him. Julian could have had other calls in the race, but he chose to ride us after he worked her on the grass, and she worked so impressive. I mean, there was other, Judy the Beauty worked that day, Hootenanny worked that day, Sunset Glow worked that day. And, I mean, if anybody watched the work, she was, her work was equally, if not more impressive than any of the Breeders' Cup horses. So I think people probably took a little notice, and maybe, you know, the wise guy got talking, and, you know, probably was. But, you know, she was, at one point, she was, you know, still 12-1, and then, you know, when they loaded her in the gate, she drifted all the way, you know, all the way to 7-1. So, you know, I don't bet, but, you know, there was a lot of people that did bet that. Everybody was talking to me after the race. You know, I think she had a lot of people on her.
You know, Ben, for such a nice filly, no rider has ever ridden back on her. I mean, Julian rode her that day. What'd he say to you after the race?
You know, he was just very impressed with her, you know, the ease in which she did everything. But, you know, he kind of knew what we had when he worked her that day in the grass, you know, and he worked her back since. So he's actually sat on her 3 times. He's only ridden her in a race once. But, you know, the only reason that, you know, nobody rode her, James rode her the first time, and I mean, he would have ridden her back if I would have ran her at Arlington, but we chose to go to Kentucky Downs. He wasn't there that day. And I beat Brees Blanc just because I had a relationship from my time with Christoph, with Brees, you know, riding some for him.
Right.
He had won a stake at Kentucky Downs for Christoph the year before on a filly named Mystical Star. You know, so I know he knows. He's European, you know, kind of foundation. You know, he knows how to ride a course like Kentucky Downs, so he chose to ride Brees, and Brees did nothing wrong. But, you know, Julian was in the race when she won, and he was kind of the filly that bumped us a little bit. And then, you know, she kind of ran by Julian's filly at the time. So Julian kind of knew her from that race. And when I talked to Julian about riding her, you know, he was more than grateful to get to pick up the ride. And, you know, now I get to get on her again, and he knows her. And I think he really has a lot of confidence in the filly.
All right, so how did Sparkling Review come out of the Valley View, and how's she been training up to this afternoon's Mrs. Revere?
You know, she came out of the race great, and if anything, I mean, she's training as good, if not better, than she ever has. I mean, she worked on the dirt once at Keeneland, and it was, you know, spectacular work, and she galloped out. She worked in 47 and change, and galloped out 3/4 in 1:12. I mean, it was, you know, with just my exercise rider on her. And then I took her up to Churchill and gave her a spin around the turf course, and she worked in 50, which ended up being the bullet work of the day because the dogs were way out. And if anything, I think she's figured it out mentally more. You know, she kind of, when we first got her, she wasn't high strung. She was just a little bit, you know, maybe wanting to do too much from time to time. Now she gets the whole process. You know, she's run enough now where she understands everything, and she knows what we're asking of her, and she's just the ultimate professional now. So, you know, her training has gone off. I mean, I couldn't have asked for her to train any better leading up to this race. I'm kind of, you know, excited to run her, and hope she, you know, shows this afternoon the way she's been training in the morning for me.
Well, Ben, all congratulations with the successes with the Sparkling Review. Congratulations on the graded stakes win. All the best later on in the Mrs. Revere, and thank you so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Thank you, Ben. Ben Colebrook, ladies and gentlemen, and we are up to our final break. When we return, California steward Scott Chaney will join us as we go to this break, the Sunshine Millions Classic Preview at the former Calder, now Gulfstream Park West. 6-5 favorite, number 5, Wildcat Red. Co-second choices at 2-1, number 4, East Hall, and number 3, Chivarelli. So we will take a look at the Sunshine Millions Classic Preview to the break. Back with Scott Chaney right after these messages.
And they're off in the Millions Classic Preview. Excellent beginning for Wildcat Red, and he heads off to try to take the early lead, but Jose Caraballo and I'm Stepping It Up have similar ideas, so each Wildcat Red will be taken in hand by Edgar Prado, and I'll Stepping It Up takes the lead. Wildcat Red now into the 2-path while racing in second from Chivarelli, who's 3 wide through the initial stages, while third. In between horses, that's Senor Quisquiano with Mega Move down to the inside. Then it's into East Hall. He's racing second last, and he's 5 lengths better than Undeniable Temper, who's last of all as they move into the backstretch run. They went through the opening quarter in 23-2, and at 30-1, I'm Stepping It Up leads the way by a length and a quarter. Favorite Wildcat Red is now racing second from Chivarelli, who's now third, while 3 wide. Senor Quisquiano is next. Then it's a length back to Mega Move, who's on the inside. They're followed by Indiana Derby winner East Hall within 5 lengths of the lead, and 5 lengths more to Undeniable Temper. They pass the half-mile pole after a half-mile in 47-1, and they kick to the far turn. It's still I'm Stepping It Up, who leads it now by a length and a half. Wildcat Red chirped along by Prado to get after the leader in second. Lopez goes to work on Chivarelli, who's now third in front of Senor Quisquiano fourth. Now asked to quicken up is Luis Saez aboard East Hall. He's racing fifth and needing to do better as Wildcat Red just hit the front. 3/4, 1:12-2, and Wildcat Red has the lead. Chivarelli comes under pressure to try to gain second. East Hall now swung into action and begins to find his best stride with 3/16 to go. East Hall moving up on the outside to try to get to Wildcat Red, who digs deep and tries to find more. Chivarelli is now third. There's an eighth of a mile to go. Here's the matchup. East Hall on the outside, Wildcat Red on the inside. Wildcat Red trying to stave off the rally, but East Hall's got him now, and East Hall's moving away. It's Luis Saez and East Hall for Bill Kaplan on the wire by 2. Close for second. Give it to Wildcat Red gamely over Chivarelli. Then I'm Stepping It Up in 1:46-4.
This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Looking for a racing partnership with proven success? Bloodlines Racing is for you. Using genetic profiling, Bloodlines horses are bred from some of the most successful thoroughbreds in the world. Horses like Distorted Beauty and Invading Humor have won 6 of their last 7 races over the summer, and together have delivered to our partners more than $366,000 in earnings. For our latest offerings and opportunities, visit us at bloodlinesracing.com. Bloodlines Racing. Racing quality.
I got it. Watch me. I got it. Hey! I got something that makes me want to shout. I got something that tells me what it's all about. I got a move that tells me what to do. If you don't, brothers and sisters, then you won't know what it's all about.
Ladies and gentlemen, please note, the stewards have ruled that there will be no change to the original order of finish. It will remain 7, 9, 13, and 6.
And with that, the most controversial call in Breeders' Cup history, and with the explanation of the decision, one of the 3 stewards who made the call, Mr. Scott Chaney. Scott, Mark Cassano welcoming you to Down the Stretch.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Scott, we really appreciate you joining us this morning to discuss the decision-making process because, I mean, as you know, the decision has caused widespread controversy. I mean, you guys even made the floor of the Kentucky State Legislature this past week. I mean, has the degree of controversy surprised you at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I guess not. Part of it is I don't go on blogs and probably read as much as some of the other commentators do. So I would probably be bad at measuring the level. But at the end of the day, it's the Breeders' Cup Classic. I mean, it's the most important. It's the biggest purse, at least in the U.S. and arguably in the top 4 important races, depending on the Triple Crown series each year. So, yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. It's a lot of money. It's a very important race. I mean, Horse of the Year honors are on the line. So, it's going to generate more. I mean, I think any decision that we made would have generated more buzz than, the 4th race on Thursday afternoon.
All right, let's go back to Breeders' Cup Saturday. The Classic is over with. The horses are galloping out. Take us through what you and your fellow stewards, Kim Sawyer and Tom Ward, did at this point.
Absolutely. Interestingly, for us, it started, 4 seconds out of the gate because we're watching the race, we see what happens, and I mean, your initial reaction as a racing fan is disappointment, and as a steward too, because you know that you're going to be involved in inquiry in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and after a fantastic weekend of racing, it's the last thing you want. So I feel like sometimes there's a popular wisdom that stewards somehow like to be involved in the outcome. Obviously, nothing is further from the truth. But we have to watch the rest of the race. And frankly, just like sort of an insight for your viewers or your listeners, we as stewards, as human beings, hope that Bayern loses the race or just kind of fades back and finishes last, because we can see what's happened at the start, and your desire, of course, is not to have an inquiry. So if that horse finishes last, you don't have to worry about it. Stewards aren't involved. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen. I mean, he does all the work, holds off 2 horses in a stretch duel, and so now our work starts. I guess sort of the first piece that happens is the horses pass by the quick official, which is a guy on the radio on the track about a furlong past the wire, who takes the rider's claim to foul. So if a rider wants to claim foul, lodge an objection, they do so with him, and they radio up to us immediately and say, so-and-so wants to lodge a claim of foul. Obviously, that didn't happen in this race. Then the next point is usually we try to get a quick look at it, because we've only seen it live once, before we hang the inquiry sign and get a quick look at it to tell Trevor Denman, the track announcer, and our tote folks, which numbers to flash and who's involved. The next step then is to call down to the winner's circle and let them know what jockeys we want to talk to. In addition to that, we have to get the full order of finish. Obviously, there were a couple horses involved. We needed to know where each horse finished, so we have to determine that. And then we sort of get into the meat and potatoes of looking at a race. And that's reviewing the camera angle.
Scott, did the fact that no riders claim foul have an impact in your decision?
It doesn't. Just as oftentimes when a rider claims foul, and we have a disqualification or not disqualification, people say, oh, it's because it was a rider's claim of foul, it's looked at differently. That's not true, nor is the fact that a rider didn't claim foul really a factor in the decision. Mostly because in this race we talked to the 2 principal riders involved afterwards anyway, so we got their opinion whether they claim foul or not. I mean, it's certainly telling in terms of how serious they viewed the situation, I suppose. Riders would probably tell you, well, it's so obvious, I didn't think I had to. For me, $5 million on the line in the Breeders' Cup Classic, you don't leave this to chance, is sort of my opinion. But be that as it may, we saw it and we hung the inquiry sign.
Now, we just saw a slow-mo of Bayern coming away from the gate.
Sure.
Did Bayern foul one or more horses coming away from the gate? And if so, why wasn't he taken down?
Sure. Absolutely fouled 2 horses in my estimation. There were some of the other horses were involved, but it was minor. Interference, 2 horses, no question. He breaks in pretty sharply. I think there's a strain of thinking out there that somehow Martin Garcia did it on purpose or allowed his horse to do it and didn't take any action. That's the best way I can say it is conspiracy theory or totally insane. It's just not true, right? The horse broke in on its own. Martin actually does a pretty good job quickly to try to correct it. Unfortunately, he's pretty far back, if you're watching the slow-mo, pretty far back on his reins, which most of the jocks are when they break to give the horse a shot, and takes a second to pull him off. But his reaction's immediate. But to answer your question, certainly interferes with 2 horses, Shared Belief and Merino to his inside. The 5-horse breaks pretty slowly and is not really involved. And so then the question is, in California, our rule is basically, to sort of paraphrase it, we decide if there's interference, and then the second step is we decide if that interference costs the horse the opportunity, horses interfered with the opportunity at a better placing. So then, moving on to the second step really quickly, we need to determine whether it costs Shared Belief a better placing and Merino a better placing. And obviously, our determination was that it didn't, given the no change. Our feeling was that Shared Belief was interfered with. He lost 3rd position. In California racing, we care about their exact position. So it's not position from the winner; it's the next horse in front of them. So he was 3.5 lengths behind third. You know, in our experience and given the length of the race and where it happened, it's just unfair to say that it cost him 3.5 lengths. Marino obviously is a little easier case, I believe, because, you know, he was last like 22 lengths behind the 13th place finisher and, you know, a million lengths behind the winner. But in our estimation, he was not cost opportunity of better placing either.
That's interesting, Scott. Let's take the Moreno part of it first. First of all, his interference likely changed the pace scenario of the race because Moreno, and this is not an arguable point, is a one-dimensional speed horse. His trainer will admit that to you. He has to run out of there. So being interfered with early in the race had to cost him any chance at running his best, and it also had to, in all likelihood, change the pace scenario. Was that factored in at all?
It was not. Frankly, we don't do much handicapping. I don't know if I could have told you that Marino was a front runner before the race started. Obviously, I know it now because of folks like you. But to be honest, whether he comes from behind or whether he's going to be on the lead is not something that is a factor in our decision, nor should it be. I'm certain that the wagering public and the racing industry doesn't want stewards, you know, when we're doing an inquiry to look at this, for example, this race, look at the start, run over to our daily racing form and decide if we're going to disqualify a horse because the horse he interfered with either comes from behind or not. I mean, when folks say that, you know, the horse is going to be on the lead, it changed the race entirely, I agree with that. I mean, that's an objective fact. But it's not reasonable to use as a standard for disqualifying or not. So the implication in that statement then is, had the horse not preferred to be on the lead, let's say it was a come from behinder and it suffered that interference, that the outcome of the steward's decision somehow should have been different, right? And obviously that can't be the case. So the fact that it changed the complexion of the race is not something stewards look at. And personally, I don't think we should be looking at it. And I think the wagering public would be really upset if that's a factor we sort of took into account.
Well, that's interesting, and I understand everything you're saying. It's just that when so much supposition comes into play here, because let's face it, Scott, if an incident or a foul occurs late in a race, it's reasonably easy to make a decision, did that alter the order of finish? But when you've got 1.25 miles to run, there's a lot of supposition that comes into play, and Moreno was a rather dramatic horse to have interference occur to because he's a one-dimensional speed horse.
I absolutely agree with you. But for me, that's an argument to not disqualify a horse. To disqualify horses less frequently to start because they do have 1.25 miles to sort of make it up. And more importantly, it's so speculative about how much they lost or what they lost or how much it would have cost them, right? When the interference occurs the 16th of a mile from the finish line, we all kind of agree that we have a pretty good idea of how much it cost. Were they moving forward at the time? Were they moving back? Were they, you know, in contention, so on and so forth? How much were they beaten? That number that the number that they lost, the position, is a lot clearer, easier to determine. At the start of 1.25 mile race, man, I think we can all agree that figuring out how much they lost is much more speculative. So, you know, your answer might be, since it's more speculative, you should just disqualify the horse and be done with it. I would argue the other side, and it's obviously borne out in our decision, is if it's more speculative, if you're guessing about how much they would have lost by that bump, that we shouldn't be disqualifying horses based on that. I actually think it would lead to a lot more unfair results, and that over time, the racing public would be disappointed with those decisions, right? Rather than focusing on this one. I mean, obviously this one is a big one, but to be fair, it's actually pretty consistent with what we've done in the past. I mean, one of the favorite things, of course, folks to beat up stewards on is inconsistency, right?
Right.
And it's an easy argument to make, but a hard argument to like actually demonstrate. You know, this call and this call are inconsistent. If you watch California racing, especially Southern California racing, it's pretty clear that we treat these starts pretty consistently. We're really loath to make a change at the start.
Scott, I spoke with Mike Martin of the California Horse Racing Board last week, and he told me that you, the group of stewards, are going to be meeting with the California Horse Racing Board. I believe he told me next week to discuss the possibility of changing the wording of the rules. Is there some kind of a change that you would like to see that would make not only your job easier, but maybe the public would understand things better and it would protect the public?
Sure. So once every 6 months, we get together, all the stewards in California, to discuss all sorts of different things. We actually have a meeting scheduled for this coming Tuesday. After this race, and sort of the controversy engendered, this sort of item was added to the agenda. Personally, I like the rule. And I think it's the most equitable, fair rule over time. I think folks will disagree with certain calls here and there in sort of its application. But for me, every jurisdiction in the country used to be a foul is a foul.
Right.
If you interfere with a horse,
right,
you are disqualified no matter where they finished. And every jurisdiction has moved away from that because it's unfair result, and it leads to unfairness for both the wagering public and also the connections of the horses, right? But when you move away from it, you introduce subjectivity into stewards' decisions. So some folks, might think that's a bad thing. The last sort of state to sort of leave that foul is a foul approach behind was New York, and they're sort of between a foul is a foul and California, where they use how much the horse was beaten as a factor in their decision and not determinative like we do. You can argue whether that's a better rule or not, sort of go back that way, but given the fact that everyone's moved away from it because of its sort of draconian nature, I think the New York rule is actually more subjective and allows stewards it actually encourages probably inconsistency, where at least our rule sort of encouraged consistency. I could be the minority in this position in California when we meet, but I think it's a good rule. Personally, I think it led to we applied it. We have to apply it in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and I believe it led to the right result. Obviously, there's a large set of folks who don't. But to be fair, let's say we disqualify the winner of the Breeders' Cup Classic. I submit to you that there would be just as much of an outcry, if not more, that how could you disqualify a horse for something that happened a little bump at the start, a mile and a quarter from the finish. So, we knew this was not going to be good the second the bump occurred, regardless of what our decision was going to be. And this interview is an obvious result of that.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I wish we had more time. First of all, I appreciate you taking time to discuss this with our audience. I think it's critical to our sport that the fans understand what the stewards went through, and the stewards are open enough to discuss it with the fans. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Good luck this coming week in discussing the possible rule changes. And again, thanks so much for your time this morning.
Anytime.
Thank you, Scott. Scott Chaney, ladies and gentlemen. I wish we had another half an hour because I've got about 8 or 10 other questions, but we are simply out of time. Time to thank all the folks who helped get this week's show on the air here at the studios at the Clubhouse Racebook in Albany. Our associate producer, Julie Hoxie, and Mick Richards. Back in the control room in Schenectady, Pete Persico directed, Dan Hayes on audio, Pat Peretta handled pre-production. Thanks to this morning's guests, Scott Chaney and Ben Colebrook and Niall Saville. And thanks to our sponsor, Bloodlines Racing. racing quality horses like Full Sisters, Distorted Beauty, who goes in today's Mrs. Revere, and Invading Humor. For information on how to get involved with their half-sister, visit them on the web at bloodlinesracing.com. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for having joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. Stay warm. Have a wonderful weekend and a terrific upcoming week. And from all of us here at Down the Stretch, we'll see you next week.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.